Let's see if everyone can hear you.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello.
Someone let us know if they can hear us. Beverly, can you hear us? Yes.
Great,
Yes.
great.
Thank you. All right, welcome everybody, and we're going to get started with Wayne Phillips, is the curator of Carnival, and he's going to be leading us on a tour of the facility, and then we're going to go into some stories about a lot of the stuff that he has collected over the last year, got on display that's not normally on display. So,
Phillips. I am the curator of costumes and textiles and curator of the Carnival collection here at the Louisiana State Museum. And thank you for joining us for our annual Hidden Treasures Tour, benefiting the Friends of the Cabildo, which is a very important organization to us and to me. We're doing this again virtually, just like we did last year. Normally, we like to have you here in the room, which is the whole point of being able to see behind the scenes. So you can be in the room. I work, see close up. That is our goal, and bring you right in the room. An opportunity for you to participate in this in a way that things that I have acquired just in the last year, so they haven't even been exhibited yet. So I hope that you will enjoy getting these behind the scenes views of some things that nobody else is getting to see right now. So Jason is going to follow me into the storage room. We'll kind of stop along the way as we go through my storage room, which by the way is about 6,000 square feet. But we will circle all the way back to the front of my storage room. And I have a nice array of artifacts laid out on my big work table that Jason will be able to get up very close to and get some really good views of. And I'll tell you some stories about how they came into the collection. So let's go. Now we'll stop right here now that we've got something really amazing and wonderful to look at. The exhibition that we did here at the Presbyterian back in 2019 was a little heartbreaking because I opened this exhibit in June of 2019. It stayed open through of the exhibition, of course, was museum was closed, so we weren't able to but we still had a wonderful opportunity to share some really special artifacts that I worked for many years to collect and to bring into our collection, for permanent preservation and for the exhibition also. Okay, let me see if I can make the audio a little better. Maybe it's just on the other side. Is that any better? Any better? A little?
Better, everybody?
Of course, I'm not talking right now, so that's better. Okay. Well, I can't hear anything outside my own ears, so hopefully, hopefully you're hearing everything that I can communicate. I definitely want you to be able to hear it clearly. But right here in the first area of the costume storage room that I'm bringing you into, I have this amazing costume that is a really unusual acquisition for us because of its grand size. It's about 20 years old, and hopefully some of you were able to see the exhibition that we did back in 2019 and 2020 when the full costume was on exhibition. This is a costume that was worn by a man who reigned as king of a crew called the Crew of Petronius. And Petronius is one of the gay Mardi Gras crews here in the city. In fact, they are the oldest gay Mardi Gras crew in New Orleans. They were founded. So what this kind of represents for us, for the museum, and for me as a curator is an opportunity to show ways that all sectors of the community celebrate long history going back to the 1950s and 1960s of members of the gay community creating crews and having balls for themselves. And of course, these are some of the opportunities that that people have had over the years to see some of the grandest, most glorious, and largest costumes that you'll see anywhere in Mardi Gras, including this one. This is a pair of hand soldered, wired mosquito wings, and they were attached to a full costume, a tunic that was worn, and some large boots. And he had a headpiece on, carried a mask in front of his face. It's kind of unfair to show it to you in this format because it's all sort of folded up. But this is actually the tail of the mosquito. It comes all the way down here. It ends in this segment that would drag behind him. And he wore it not only at the ball, but also on Mardi Gras Day. And win the Best in Show award at the Bourbon Street Awards, which is the big costume contest on Mardi Gras. One of the secrets of this working on it to get it in good shape for exhibition is how it's actually made. And of course, as a costume historian, costume curator, I not only love to learn about the people who make these costumes and the people who wear these costumes, but also the way that is custom made, one of a kind. Yeah, there's a lot of innovation that goes into creating a costume that's this large and flamboyant. And I noticed that some of the little segments, I made the decision, which I don't normally do, to open up the seam on the back side of the tail so I could get into the tail to figure out how it was made and what I could do to maybe make it a little bit better and fluff it up a little bit. And I discovered that each one of these segments in this tail is actually made with a rubber ball, a little bouncing child's ball. And of course, over the course of 20 years, this was worn in 2001, the balls had deflated. So it was actually a very easy repair. I just used my rubber balls that were in the tail, and it looked as good as new. This is a 13-foot wingspan. Also shows you some of the challenges of preserving costumes. You can see that it's actually hanging on a hanging and rolling rack. I don't take a lot of costumes in that are this big because it takes up a lot of space. And of course, you know, one of the things that I always have to remember when I'm bringing something into the collection is that, you know, barring meteors destroying the planet, this will be here forever and ever. This will be here 100 years from now, 200 years from now, maybe. Louisiana State Museum was founded in 1906. So the artifacts that were collected in 1906 are still here today. So this will still be here, hopefully, 100 years from now. And it will have a good and safe home, a challenge to preserve and a challenge to keep. Sometimes the materials themselves also are a challenge to preserve when we're talking about modern materials, plastics and glues and things like that. So I always have to judge each acquisition and each cost that are used and if I think that they really will last. But this one was just too irresistible not to bring into the collection. And it was the featured showpiece in the Gay Carnival exhibit that we did in 2019. And while we're sort of in the same area, because some of the things here, just some costume designs that are actually still in the frames need to be unframed so the costume designs can go back into storage. But I just have to point out some of these gorgeous, gorgeous costume designs. These are from 1970 from a crew called Amun Ra. And the crew of Amun Ra is one of the oldest gay crews today, founded in 1965, and again, still active. And these costume designs, I think, are just some of the best that you'll see from Gay Carnival, done by actually a professional costume designer, a man named Carter Church, who not only was a professional designer, but also was a founding member of the crew of Amun Ra as well. And he executed these costume designs in watercolor. So I'll point Jason around to his back to show you a couple other things. Uh, before I think maybe he needs to make a quick little adjustment here. Costume designs and a few posters that are here on display are actually still in frames left over from the display. Put away, but I'm glad the designs, the one in the back in the silver frame is from the crew of Arminius. That's also a costume that won the Best in Show at the Bourbon Street Awards about and that was made by a friend of mine named Joel Hayes, who is a brilliant, brilliant costume designer. And if you pivot over to the left there, Jason, a wonderful, very flamboyant costume design from quite early, from about 1975, from a crew called Olymp. We know that 60 plus years, there have been about 40 gay crews that have come and gone. Today, there are, I think, about 8 or 9 that still exist today. But Olympus is one of those crews that had a really successful run, founded in about 1970, disbanded about 20 years later. And believe it or not, they actually moved to Houston, Texas. The crew of Olympus actually still exists, and they I have been in Houston, Texas since the early 90s. In fact, they were here longer, or they were in Texas longer than they were even in New Orleans. In fact, I think it's the only Mardi Gras crew of any kind in Houston, Texas. Just to the left of it is a beautiful poster from the crew of Petronius from 1969 collection, designed by a man named Jamie Greenleaf, who was a professional designer, but also a very early member of the crew of Petronius. So why don't we take a walk down this way, Jason? So I'm just going to kind of pass through the storage areas. If you want to see some of the racks here, Jason, just to show some of the large of the collection. pretty much anything that anybody in Louisiana has ever worn, whether it's adults or children, military uniforms, and accessories of all kinds, glasses, shoes, socks, all types in the collection. And in fact, so I'll stop right here and uh, show you some of the things that I've pulled out and put on my work table so that you can see them close up. Jason will be able to get some really good close-up views, and I can give you a little bit of history about them. With my introduction to it's important to realize when we talk about Carnival, we're not just talking about costumes, we're talking about sort of cultural expression. And there are so many different ways that Mardi Gras is celebrated. There are so many different ways, I mean, endless ways that uh, disguise themselves and create costumes for Mardi Gras. Some very flamboyant, some very expensive, some professionally made, some thrown together on Mardi Gras morning, just like maybe a Halloween costume or something like that, and everything in between. And every group, every cultural group in New Orleans has, in some cases, their own way of celebrating Carnival and masking and wearing costumes. And perhaps no cultural group is more esteemed when it comes to Carnival costuming than the Mardi Gras Indians, or what we now really tend to refer to as the Black masking Indians. Mardi Gras Indians is a term that has been used for decades and decades. But scholars and some of the maskers themselves have started using the term Black masking Indian, because what we're talking about is a costuming tradition that really isn't even uh, uh, limited to Mardi Gras. These are mostly Black men and women who have been uh, connected to the culture of Mardi Gras and the culture of masking and costuming in New Orleans, in some cases through families going back to the 1800s. They're really kind of unknown. We know a few milestones here and there, early 1800s. We know that this tradition of mostly at that time, certainly almost all at that time, Black men, uh, the sense of dignity is so important. It's art exhibitions, books, dissertations, exhibitions, not only here in New Orleans and Louisiana, but even all over the world. And actually, some of the Black masking Indians are professional musicians as well, and they travel all over the world. The one of the touchstones of the Black masking costuming tradition is beadwork. And this is a style of beadwork that has roots in Africa as well as Haiti, and have been adapted and have evolved into extraordinary expressions of artistry and mythology and mysticism and religion and just deep, powerful, profound symbolism. And what I'll do here is I'll hold up this piece. This is a tunic or a shirt, if you want to call it that, showing some of the hand-done beadwork right there on the front. That's called a patch because it's a distinct piece surrounded by rhinestones and yellow velvet. And on the back is another beaded patch, extraordinary. This beautiful animal, this spotted animal. Um, what is really amazing and what is really wonderful to me, really warms my heart about the beadwork and the creation of these costumes here in New Orleans is that most of these, well, all of these, of course, are done at home, done by non-professionals, done for themselves or for their family members or for community members to wear on Mardi Gras and at other times throughout the year. But it's something that a lot of the people in this culture, they grow up with it. They literally as soon as a little boy or little girl can hold a needle of thread, it needs watching them do what they do with needle and thread and creating this magic, and it becomes very meaningful to them. Particularly, I love the thought and the encouragement of young boys, little boys, actually learning how to sew and learning how to create these beautiful suits. And they're called suits in the culture. Costume, of course, is just a very broad term, but in the culture, in the Black masculine culture, these are called suits. And here are a pair of boots that were worn, design here, the beautiful white parrot, and again, more rhinestones and more beadwork and more velvet, and all done on the base of a offensively. This is spotted fur. It is actual fur, but it's rabbit fur. It's not a rare fur, but it's a lot of the animal prints are used in these suits by the Black masking Indians in an effort to sort of create connections, cultural connections to symbols of Africa. Now, I'm very excited to say that I believe, I have no proof otherwise, but I believe here at the Louisiana State Museum, we actually have the oldest complete Mardi Gras Indian suit in existence. And what makes me very proud about that is that the museum has made a concerted effort to document this extraordinarily important and creative tradition of the Black masking Indians for, gosh, over 50 years. This beautiful suit here on the table with the red sleeves and the white fur trim, or the white feather trim, actually, dates from 1971. And this was a suit, this is a shirt, this is a suit that was made that year in 1971 and acquired by the museum that year in 1971. And it includes the headpiece, the apron, which is the part that's worn over the legs, the pants, the shoes, all beaded, and has been in our collection now for over 50 years, and is a complete costume. For a long time, the Black masking Indians recycled beaded pieces, beaded patches into other suits. That's a lot of beads, these beaded patches that they, and each suit every year that they make for themselves is supposed to be different. So they don't want to recycle and reuse. They want to use a new symbol and of course spend time throughout the year actually making these suits instead of recycling and reusing. But there were, it was a lot more throughout the 20th century for pieces to be recycled and reused. But that has become much, much less common. This suit was made and worn by a gentleman named Bo Dallas, who is sort of one of our great heroes and one of our great pioneers. Bo passed away just a few years ago, not that long ago, and his son, Bo Dallas Jr., is now in the position of leadership in this particular Mardi Gras Indian tribe or gang, as they call themselves, which is the wild magnolias. And I'm probably actually going to bring Bo Dallas Jr. into the museum here and maybe get him to help me sort of fluff up the costume, make it a little presentable so that we can put it back on display soon. So Jason, why don't we go around that side? Another really wonderful aspect of the black masking tradition is the skeletons, and it's kind of hard to explain the meaning behind the skeletons, but this is a long-standing tradition. We know that it goes back at least to the early 1900s, and actually has close ties to the Indian tradition, the Mardi Gras Indian, or the black masking Indian tradition. This is a tradition in where men wear the skeleton and they also heads, these skulls, sometimes with blood dripping down them. This is again all handmade. I'm not sure if you can see in there if the lighting is good enough that you can see sort of the structure inside. It's a a challenge like very similar to both front and time, but don't overdo it because Dr. Death may be waiting for you. Suit, you can see the gloves and even the hand painted look like that. So I'll lead you. Yes. There's our Union suit down here with the hand painted bones on it. You can see the gloves and the feet. To be fair, it's important to point out that this is a suit that was actually made for the museum and was not worn, but it was made by a gentleman who is part of this culture, and he made it sort of as a demonstration for us, and it has been on exhibit. I mentioned that exhibitions of black masking traditions in New Orleans are viewed and seen all over the world. And in fact, the exhibition that these two costumes were just recently a part of, which was called Mystery in Motion, African American and Spirituality in New Orleans, which just closed in December. A lot of the components of this exhibition, wonderfully, are actually traveling to Paris, France at the end of this year to be displayed in an exhibition at the Musée du Quai Branly, which is right there in the heart of Paris, which is an ethnographic museum that focuses a lot on cultures around the world. So if you are had the great fortune to be in Paris, France later on this year, you might see some of these costumes on exhibit. So that is the exhibit that we just closed recently, the Mystery in Motion exhibition, the Black Masking costume exhibition. And the exhibition that we have open right now is all about Rex, which I'm sure you probably heard, especially if you're local.
you know that the Rex organization, the crew, is celebrating their 150th anniversary this year. It's a very exciting opportunity that we had to partner with them to create a really large scale grand exhibition to celebrate their 150th anniversary, which is on display in the Presbyterian right on Jackson Square. And probably for the last 3 years, 3 to 4 years or so, this has kind of been my, not only my scholarly thrust, but it has also been my collecting thrust. And to cover 150 years of history is a lot. And you would think that an institution like Rex that is so iconic in New Orleans, so crucial a part of Mardi Gras, and has been around for a century and a half, you would think that we know everything about them because they have been written about in books and magazines and newspaper articles. And of course, the Rex organization crowns the king and the queen of Carnival every year. So their profile could not be higher in the Carnival world. But what we learned with our research is that there were things that we didn't know. Even just little statistics, little interesting facts that we didn't know, or artifacts that sort of came our way that were rather surprising. And I have to say, one of the joys of putting this exhibit together, one of the opportunities I had or tried to take advantage of was really reaching out broadly across not just the country, but the world to find some of these hidden artifacts. And I was able to locate artifacts that had just never been seen before. Some I had to go after, some I had to push for, some I had to keep pursuing, some just kind of fell in our laps. And some of these artifacts came from as far away as Italy and Canada. Within the United States came from California, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. And these are usually, you know, families who had a connection to Rex in the early years and maybe moved away decades and decades ago. We took these artifacts with them. So it was just up to us to sort of reach out and find these artifacts again. Well, right here, kind of in our own backyard, was one of the most special artifacts that I was able to literally just bring into the collection. And Jason, I want you to come get a really close view of this, because this is a treat for everybody who is watching tonight. This is something that has not been exhibited. It will be added to the Rex exhibition very soon. The reason it hasn't been exhibited is because I literally just picked it up last week out in the country east of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So just about an hour and a half outside of town. And this was something that we knew about, something that has actually been sort of on the radar for, about 25 years when it was first discovered. And we thought we had it, I had my hands on it, it sort of disappeared, and then it popped up again. And now we have it here at the museum, and this is such an extraordinary find, something that we'll be able to add to the exhibition. And you, watching us tonight, are seeing it before anybody else. This is actually a scrapbook, which is made from an old ledger book that was kept by a gentleman named Benjamin Goodman. Benjamin Goodman was a native of New Orleans, born, I believe, in the late 1850s, and he was a practicing architect. He was also a great illustrator. He drew a lot as a practicing architect. You can certainly imagine that that would be the case. And just for his own pleasure and a matter of historical accident, he attended and witnessed all of the Mardi Gras parades that took place in 1873. Now remember, Rex was founded in 1872, so 1873 would have been just their second year of existence. And what he did is he made meticulous drawings, handmade drawings of the entire parade, and not just Rex, but all of the parades that took place during the 1873 Carnival season. And so this is something that is truly one of a kind. This is an absolute treasure. We have narrative descriptions, we have text descriptions of these parades. Of course, this was 1873, so this was, you know, really well before outdoor photography in particular was very common, because the photography equipment was so cumbersome to carry around. So if you wanted to do an illustration like this, you could probably create it as a print if you were a printmaker, or you would do something like Benjamin Goodman did. But if you will, if you see this part up here, Jason, you see how it actually says Rex, King of the Carnival. And this is the lead float. It's actually a wagon, and it has the crest of the Rex organization. And you can also see that the entire parade is on foot and on horseback. About the first 5 years of Rex's existence, there were no floats. It was all on foot, on horseback, and in wagons. So if you look down here, Jason, you can see some of the horse-drawn wagons that were actually part of this Rex parade in 1873. This is a kind of documentation, a first-hand documentation of this parade that just doesn't exist in any other format or medium. And it was passed down in the Goodman family, belonged to Benjamin Goodman's grandson, who inherited it from his father. And Mr. Goodman just passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, and his widow has donated it to the museum. What happened, though, is that when I went to pick it up last year, because I knew that it was there, and we made a connection, and I went to pick it up because I wanted to include it in the Rex exhibition. By the time I got to her house, she said that all she could find were photocopies. So she pulled out these photocopies, very crestfallen, very heartbroken that I came all this way. And by the time she opened the box, all she had to show were photocopies of the original drawings. And she did not know where the original drawings were. So we shed a couple of tears together because she really wanted this to come to the museum in honor and memory of her husband who had kept it so lovingly. So we kind of gave up on it. I called her a couple of times after that first meeting, and she couldn't find it. She didn't know where it was. She thought her husband might have given it to a cousin or something. And we just kind of let it go. And then right before the Rex exhibition opened, literally the Monday before the exhibit opened on Saturday, she called me and she said, I found it. It's in a plastic bin in the garage. I can't believe I found it. I wanted to run out and get it like that instant, but I had to work on the installation for the exhibit. So, but now I've got it, and it will be incorporated into the exhibit very soon. And it's not just one page. It goes and goes and goes. This is every unit, every person, every carriage, every wagon, every horse in this entire parade in 1873. Just the second parade that Rex ever had. So to say that this is an extraordinary historical find and an extraordinary historical document is kind of an understatement. The Rex organization is very aware of this. It has been published before in some of their history books and in Arthur Hardy's Mardi Gras Guide. In fact, Arthur Hardy was really the one who discovered it when Mr. Goodman approached him, probably 20, 25 years ago with it, and then sort of lost touch with the family. But this anniversary that has popped up, of course, now has given us a great excuse to sort of find this again and incorporate it into our history of the Rex organization. And one of the things that is fun about this section here is that it shows some of the advertisements that took place or that were seen in this 1873 parade. Now, if you know New Orleans Mardi Gras, you know that advertising in parades is absolutely forbidden today. But this was, 149 years ago? So it was a different time. And Rex was a very new organization, still trying to raise money. And they did allow some advertising wagons, or what they called advertising vans, in that parade in 1873. And it wasn't until 1877 that they transitioned away from a foot and horse parade to a float parade like we know it to be today. And of course, since I'm talking about this and talking about the 150th anniversary and the Rex organization and this important commemoration, of course, naturally, I have to talk about this book, which is really a treasure. And if you haven't picked up a copy of this book yet, you really need to, because it is probably going to sell out. Dr. Stephen Hales, who is the Rex historian and archivist, spent several years writing this beautiful compendium of the history of Rex. 150 years. And this is actually a photograph from the museum's collection right on the cover. This is Rex from 1901. And it's just a beautifully illustrated photograph or a book with lots and lots of wonderful photographs. He takes the whole history of Rex decade by decade and sort of lines up everything that happened in that decade that was really important and unique, including some things that are kind of tough to tell about the history of the Rex organization. So I have to give them credit for really kind of for going there and really putting it all out there. Jason, why don't you come on this way? Now, I talked about the Goodman scrapbook, and I have a couple of other scrapbooks here to show you. For a long time, at least going back to the 1950s, the Rex organization would create a personalized scrapbook that would be given to the King of Carnival that year, also to the Queen. You can see how large it is. You can see the size of it, sort of. You can see the scale of this gigantic scrapbook. So Rex would give the scrapbook to the King and the Queen. It would be personalized. It says Rex 1974. This was made for a gentleman named Eves Poidevant, who was King of Carnival in 1974. And this has just been donated by Mr. Poidevant's son, who has just given it to the museum and has not been exhibited, has not been seen yet. This scrapbook probably weighs about 30 or 40 pounds. And it was up to him and his family to compile everything into the scrapbook. But what really makes it so special is, there's there's a good way to sort of see the scale of it. That's a coffee table book, and now you see how big the scrapbook is. The scrapbooks were actually made in the scale so they could show an entire sheet of newspaper inside the scrapbook. And they are probably some of the best sources of documentation in history because they just include everything, photographs, documents, letters, congratulations, cards, telegrams, souvenirs, doubloons, just everything is kind of packed into these scrapbooks. And I want to open this one for you so that you can sort of see some of the content. There to protect what's on display next to it. But basically everything that they collected from their year would be tossed into this scrapbook. All the letters, all the instructions that they were given when they were to be king or queen. Lots and lots of photographs. Invitations to all of the balls. And this is Mr. Poidevant's scroll that was given to him. Every king and queen gets a hand calligraphied scroll documenting their reign. And again, Mr. Poidevant was Rex in 1974. Sign from the car that drove him to the ball that night, dated and everything. And you can see full pages of newspaper here with this photograph and the photograph of his queen. Just lots and lots of beautiful photography, wonderful photography, large size photography. And what you will also see now too is what a challenge it is to collect these scrapbooks. They are a genuine preservation challenge because we know what happens to glue. This is old rubber cement, and of course that will dry out at some point, and the pieces that were used, that were adhered into the scrapbook, just pop right out.
I think it was two, another for the calendar.
Which one?
Back another page.
Another page?
Not even two pages. Next. It's her calendar. This next one. There it is. Other events.
Oh well, here's his February calendar for Mardi Gras. That's a pretty full schedule for a man who was going to be king of Carnival that year. And Mardi Gras took place on February the 26th. So yeah, there's Mardi Gras right there. But it's a lot of things to do. but I love the fact that he kept this, and you know, it's a wonderful document of what it was like to be king of Carnival, and it just goes on and on. I did want to point out a few things. I don't know if you can see up here, JC, but this is Mr. Poyman actually getting his wig and his makeup done from the newspaper. And some really fantastic photographs of him. He was such a jovial fellow, such a beloved man, and a great Rex. You can just see it in his face how much he loved being king of Carnival, and who wouldn't be? You know, the men who were selected to be king of Carnival, you know, they're really, you know, not just monarchs sitting atop the throne. They are honored for their civic contributions and philanthropy, and they are on every board and support every charity in the city. And that is how and why they are selected to be Rex. It's an extraordinary honor that is very emotional to the men who are able to accept this honor. So it just goes on and on and on, and a wonderful sort of flashback to old days, telegrams of congratulations. You just thought you haven't seen telegrams in decades, but he collected all of his telegrams, all the telegrams. So which I guess is what maybe the email or the text message of today. Here's one. Sorry, I cannot join your breakfast feast, but I'm stuck in Washington, to say the least. He even rhymed it. Your achievements are known far and wide, so please remember that I'm on your side. Wow, look at that. That's even like a poem sent in telegram form. So it just goes on and on. And these scrapbooks are just such wonderful sources of information. But I want to back up and show you the other one here, because this is something that is done today. The Kings of Carnival still get a big scrapbook. It is up to them to put it together. And I want to honor this gentleman, a man named Dennis McDonald, who reigned as Rex in 2001. He just passed away just less than a month ago. And he was beloved in the community, and was the only king of Carnival, I think, at least since the very, very early years in Rex, who was married to a past queen of Carnival. And about 10 years ago, they both donated their scrapbooks to the museum. So here's his scrapbook, this beautiful scrapbook from 2001, with the cruise motto, Pro Bono Publico, right front and center, which means for the public good, which really is a motto that they embrace wholeheartedly, because they know that they have an important civic function. So this Pro Bono Publico motto is very, very important to them. So I was so honored when Mr. McDonald entrusted this beautiful scrapbook to us. It's actually bigger than the 1974 scrapbook. Huge, huge, very heavy. And has some wonderful images in it. So here's some color copies of the newspaper from his day when his photograph was on the front of the newspaper, the Times-Picayune, alongside his queen, Niket Kearney, and other copies of newspapers talking about his reign and interviews with him. I love how they call him 2001 Rex embodies a can-do attitude. And there's another document, this beautiful document with a wax seal in it. And when he was showing this to me, you know, he was turning the pages and he started turning more pages, and I was rather confused as to why the scrapbook was so empty. There were only things at the very, very beginning. And just look how big the scrapbook is, and there is nothing in it. So why in the world would we want to bring it to the museum if it just had nothing in it except these few little odds and ends right in the front of the book and the year on the front? Well, he said, you know, oh, well, we never really got around to putting it together, but here's the box that has all the stuff that we were supposed to put in the scrapbook. So he handed me the box and said, do with this what you will. So this is kind of an unusual acquisition, an empty scrapbook and the contents that are loose from the scrapbook. Needless to say, I will not spend any time trying to create a scrapbook that doesn't exist. all of the materials that were meant for the scrapbook. Again, programs, articles, invitations, cards. Well, here's a Rex golf ball. Obviously, that would not have fit into the scrapbook, but it's certainly a unique artifact. He was an avid golfer. And the key to the city that the mayor presented to him. So that's a pretty special artifact as well. So this is kind of an unusual scrapbook, to say the least, since it's mostly empty. But all the contents are there. They just loose. They're not in the book itself. Of course, nothing symbolizes monarchy, royalty like jewelry. And the jewelry that has been worn historically by the kings and queens of Carnival cruise is just extraordinary. We went to great lengths in the new exhibition, the New Rex 150th anniversary exhibition, to create a real beautiful environment with our crown jewels vault. And it actually is in an old vault at the museum. And I had professional installers created. I wanted to create sort of a look of kind of a Tower of London look. And I think it's my favorite space in the whole exhibition. So if you get a chance to come see the Rex exhibition, I hope that you will take some time to enjoy the crown jewels vault. But I do have some jewels here that are not from Rex, but I have acquired just in the last year. This is a set of jewels worn by the queen of a crew called the Mystic Crew of Comus. And her name is Mathilde Levere. And she was queen of Comus in 1894. This is a photograph of her, a rather faded photograph. I actually worked some Photoshop magic on it on the computer to kind of make it a little more visible. But it is a wonderful original photograph. And this was a really special acquisition that just came to us this past year from Mathilde's, great niece. We talked to Mathilde. Kearney Kibble actually joined us for our class the other night, our Carnival class on Tuesday night, all the way from Australia. She's lived in Australia for many, many years, and is the only one in the family who actually inherited the name. So the name Mathilde, which is a wonderful old French name, has been passed on to the woman who actually inherited these jewels from her great aunt. They were not in Australia. They were stored in the family home in Kansas. So it still came from afar. And like I said, these things are still being found in far-flung places all over the country and all over the world. But I'm so excited to have these. These are one-of-a-kind, created specifically for Mathilde Levere in 1894. Yes, it's all rhinestones, it's all glass, but this is high-quality rhinestone work. This is the kind of work that would have been done in Paris, France, could not have been done in New Orleans at the time. And one of the most special acquisitions that we've made, and just here in the last 2 or 3 years, another thing kind of like the Benjamin Goodman scrapbook, something that has never been seen before, truly never been seen before, are some of the original jewelry drawings that I brought from Germany, actually. About 3 years ago, a man in Germany contacted me and also contacted the Rex organization to let us know he was one of Europe's leading collectors of jewelry designs, not the jewelry itself, but the jewelry artwork, the working sketches, the working illustrations for the jewelry, from theatrical companies as well as Cartier and Fabergé and all the great jewelry houses of Europe. So he collected the artwork, and he had collected a large collection of sketches from an auction in Paris. Didn't know exactly what they were in the very beginning, but he got a pretty good deal on them. But after some research, he was able to determine that what he had acquired, to his great surprise, were the original working drawings for the crowns and scepters and all the jewelry for the kings and queens of Carnival in New Orleans, mostly the Rex organization. So he approached us, he approached the museum and the Rex organization to let us know he wanted them to come here. We did have to buy them from him because he is a collector, but we bought several sets of these from him, and many of them are actually on display in the new Rex exhibition. But what I have here is an array of drawings from 1907 from the Queen of Carnival. And Jason, if you look very, very closely at this sketch right here, you can actually see the words Rex 1907 in that design for the brooch that she wore. And you can see this really unique eagle design. Again, this jewelry was always one of a kind and was given to the kings and queens by the Rex organization to keep as a gift. In fact, here, right next to it, is the presentation case for this set of jewelry. And just purely by accident, this year in 2021, we were able to acquire the original 1907 Queen of Carnival jewels. And they came to us from a gentleman who lives in St. Louis, who I believe is the great nephew of the woman who wore them in 1907. They were still in their original presentation case, as we call it, which is the big presentation box that was made to hold the jewels. And so this is the lid. It's separated from the base now, but this is the lid, and you can see how gigantic this is. In fact, in French, I think we call this a casquet. So we would, the English translation would be casket, because they look like a casket. They have this sort of head shape at the top. That's where the crown sits underneath. So this is the satin lining that protected the jewels inside. So I'm going to just move it to the side. And so this is the inside of the case. Again, the reason the jewels aren't here is because they are on display in the Rex exhibition right now. But these little holders actually would hold the bracelets. The brooch would sit right here. The necklace would sit up here. The crown would sit on this sort of telescoping panel. And the belt, which is the part that's worn by the queen around her waist, would pin all the way up here, and then come all the way down to the very bottom of the presentation case down here. And I did want to point out that a lot of these old presentation cases have these brass plaques in them that have the Rex crest on them and the Rex motto, Pro Bono Publico. Again, that motto is so meaningful and shows up in so many different ways, in so many different places, in all of the Rex documents and materials that Rex creates. So the last thing I'll point out is just a couple of additional acquisitions that were made. This is a sweet little dress that actually is about to go on exhibit. Just didn't have time to get it into the exhibit before the Rex exhibit opened. But in the late 19th and early 20th century, there was a tradition that allowed a young girl, sometimes she was a girl who lived in an orphanage, sometimes she was a girl from a prominent family that sort of switched back and forth, but a young girl, 5 or 6 years old, would be selected to give the key to the city to Rex during the Rex parade. And this dress was given to us just about 2 or 3 years ago from this young girl's family. And she was the honoree that year who got to give the key to the city to Rex in 1912. So this is the handmade dress that she wore, and you can see the purple, green, and gold satin sash. I got it sort of padded up here just to keep the ribbons fluffed up until I get it on exhibit. But this is the kind of thing that I would not have expected to survive. I knew of the existence and this tradition of young girls being selected to give the key to the city to Rex back then, which is the tradition that ended in 1917, right before World War I, which is the last carnival before the war. And a lot of traditions that took place before the war did not come back after the war. So this tradition of a young girl getting the key to the city did not return after World War I. But I was really surprised when this came around. I wouldn't have expected the dress that she wore in the Rex parade or during the Rex parade to have survived. And it is documented photographically. There's some great photographs of her sort of standing up on the reviewing stand, handing the key to the city to Rex. Very charming little piece. And then a Queen of Carnival dress here from 2001 that just came into our collection and will probably be added to the Rex exhibition. All handmade, hand weaved, hand designed, made here locally here in the city. And the Rex Queen's dress is always gold, but it's always sort of a deep gold. It's not a bright, shiny, brassy gold. It's sort of an antique gold. That's sort of the color that Rex prefers for their queens to wear. And just to give you a little bit of idea of the challenge of wearing a gown like this, I want to get it over to this thing on my work table to show you that with royalty comes a certain level of discomfort. This is the harness that would have been worn by a queen of Carnival underneath her gown. And of course, these would also be custom made for each individual queen. You can see they lace up on the sides and they open on the front here. And this is a sort of a medical grade harness that would have been underneath the dress. And actually what is kind of unfair about showing the dress here is that the dress actually hooks on to the harness. You can see sort of some of the hooks kind of along the back here. Also some hooks on these medical grade metal harnesses. So the dress actually hooks on to the harness, which does help her carry the weight of these very heavy dresses throughout the ball, as well as the 16-foot mantle that she's dragging behind her. But this is not exactly a comfortable garment to wear for hours and hours at a time. So there is a certain level of discomfort that comes with being a queen of Carnival. But certainly a wonderful experience that I don't think anybody who's ever had the honor of being queen would ever give up. So I think that's the end of my tour. I think what Jason might do is just sort of ramble around a little bit for a minute and give you a chance to ask some questions. And I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have, or give you another close-up view of some of the things here on display if you wanted to see something again.
Yeah, I'm gonna do is I'm gonna
a couple of minutes to kind of get that together.
I'm gonna let people ask if there's a couple questions. So there's a couple questions, and then I will go back through everything and just kind of highlight everything one last time so everyone gets one last view of it.
Sure.
Here's the first question. If someone has crew artifacts, how does the museum determine if they will accept the donation?
That's a very good question. Everything that is offered to the museum is weighed against what we already have. We have sort of an established list of priorities. And we also have to make sure that it doesn't duplicate something that we've already got in the collection. And of course, when you're talking about jewelry, costumes, for the most part, those are one of a kind. But it also is something that we have to judge, like I was saying in the beginning about condition, the medium of the costume or the artifacts themselves, the condition. If it's something that's not in good condition, then it's going to be a problem for us to preserve it. Something that would need conservation or repair or restoration, that might be a little bit harder for us to justify bringing into the collection. In some cases, like you saw the 1873 scrapbook, it's not in great condition, but it's so unique and so one of a kind that of course we would bring it into the collection, no matter the condition. That's the long answer, but the short answer is that everything that's offered to the museum for the Carnival collection, from whatever crew, even and of course, we are the Louisiana State Museum, so we are not just collecting Carnival materials from Louisiana. Or from New Orleans. I do try to collect things from all over the state. It's harder for me to do that because I'm here geographically, physically in New Orleans. So if something from Shreveport is offered to us, then there might be a situation where things get shipped, or we exchange photographs by email or something like that before that acquisition comes in. But I always invite people just to contact me directly here at the museum, let me know what they have, and then I can sort of weigh it against what we've already got and figure out if it's worth having here at the museum.
The next question was, if you were to have a scrapbook that was being given to you, how would you like it to be? How would they like what you're saying is basically, how would you like it to be presented to you so that you don't have the issues of the glue and everything like that?
Scrapbooks. Scrapbooks are notoriously challenging. Archivists who actually are manuscripts experts and book experts, which I am not, always sort of roll their eyes sometimes when a scrapbook comes in, because you can see the condition of them sometimes. But I always want them to come in original condition, whatever condition they are. I don't want any changes to take place. Now, one of the challenges with some of the scrapbooks that do come in, particularly with the Rex scrapbooks and the early ones, when they first started making the big scrapbooks for Rex back in the 1950s and 1960s, you saw some of the pages actually have plastic protectors on them. And the problem is that those mid-century plastics that were used in the 1950s and 1960s, they degrade, they deteriorate, they crack, they get cloudy, they even get sticky. So in some cases, I have to make the tough choice to actually disassemble a scrapbook for the safety of the contents, but only if what is happening inside the scrapbook is damaging the book or the contents themselves. We never liked to take something apart because there's a story to be told about the unit, about the creation of the scrapbook itself, not just the contents and the history that we can glean from all the things that are inside the scrapbook, but just the act of putting it together. Why this is on this page and why things are sort of together on this page and what's on the next page and how things are grouped and you know, just the story that the creation of the scrapbook tells. So any scrapbook that's offered to us, I always want it to come in original condition. And then once it's here, I have to make the judgment about if parts of it have to be taken apart just for its own safety. But that is a last resort choice that we always want to have to make.
We have one more question. It is a loaded question. So I'm gonna lay it for you. Okay, Aaron Wolf says, can you explain, I believe we're talking about Rex, what they are the king of? Is it the underworld, and what does that mean? Or king of the city?
Oh, that's you know, that's a very wise question.
Good question. Yeah.
That's a very wise question. There are about 100 different crews in the city of New Orleans, and many more outside the city, and many across the state of Louisiana. And almost all of them have a king and a queen. Some of them just have a king, or some of them just have a queen. So for all of those crews, 99.9% of the crews, the kings and the queens of those crews are the kings and the queens of those crews that year. There will be a new king and a queen chosen at the coronation ball the next year and the next year and the next year. What is different about Rex, and this is important to point out, is that one of the reasons that Rex was created in 1872 was to bring about a sense of pride and a sense of civic unity in those difficult years after the Civil War, such a divisive era. It was what we call the Reconstruction era, when the Confederate States were being reconstructed back into the United States. And New Orleans was actually still occupied by federal troops in 1872, and that didn't end until 1877, which is the end of what we call the Reconstruction period. But one of the reasons that Rex was formed was for civic pride and for economic development in the city as well, because the city was suffering financially because of the occupation and because of those the difficulties suffered by, of course, throughout the South during the Civil War. And Rex wanted to create a happy, jovial monarch that would represent the entire carnival celebration. In fact, Rex really isn't the technical incorporated name of the crew. If you visit the exhibition, you will see that the title of the exhibition is Rex, the 150th anniversary of the School of Design. Now, that is a very confusing term, but in about 1874, a couple of years after the first Rex parade, they incorporated themselves as an official Mardi Gras organization and called themselves the School of Design. Now, there is no school, there are no classes, there are no artists teaching anything. It is just a moniker that they chose that sort of symbolizes their mission to advance the beauty of Carnival, particularly through their parades. And because they took on this leadership role, the king of the Rex organization is the king of the entire Carnival season. The queen of the Rex organization is the queen of the entire Carnival season. So they are the king of Carnival and the queen of Carnival. So they do have an overarching identity that sort of encompasses all of Carnival. Now it's all imaginary. It's all a fairy tale. There are no responsibilities. There are no duties. There are no powers. There's no authority in being the king of Carnival. But of course, he does ride atop the King's Float at the head of the Rex Parade on Mardi Gras morning, which is when everybody's out there. That is the day, Mardi Gras morning on Tuesday, Fat Tuesday. So the King of Carnival is riding that beautiful crown-topped float at the head of the parade. So he does have a symbolic sense of authority over the entire Carnival season. That is why his title is King of Carnival, and his queen is Queen of Carnival. So yes, he is the king of the entire Carnival season, not the king of the city, not the king of Louisiana, not the king of anything else, but the king of the Rex organization and the king of the entire Carnival season. His reign is pretty much one day and one night, and then it's over the next day and he goes back to work.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking part. Thank you, Wayne, so much. You do an amazing job with it. It's not easy doing this, so I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And thank you, everybody, for participating tonight, and enjoy Mardi Gras this year, and let's get out on the streets.
Happy Mardi Gras. Come see us. Come see the new exhibition at the Presbyterian, okay?
Thank you, Wayne.